The wedding hall glittered with crystal lights and polished marble floors, a place designed to reflect perfection back at the guests who walked through its tall doors. White roses climbed the pillars, and soft music floated in the air like a promise of happiness. People arrived dressed in elegance, their smiles practiced, their conversations light and careful. It was the kind of event where everyone felt watched, measured, silently compared. In the middle of this carefully curated beauty stood Hannah Miles, adjusting the sleeves of her simple lavender dress, wishing she could disappear into the wall behind her. She had chosen the dress because it was comfortable, not because it was fashionable, and comfort had always mattered more to her than impressing people who had never tried to understand her. Hannah was the bride's distant cousin, invited more out of obligation than affection. She knew this, just as she knew the whispers would start the moment she stepped fully into the room. She had been overweight her entire life, her body the subject of jokes, advice, and judgment from people who thought kindness was optional. As she walked toward the seating area, she felt eyes slide over her, pausing, assessing, mocking. Laughter broke out behind a cluster of guests, hushed but sharp enough to cut. Someone muttered something about the buffet not surviving the night, and another voice snickered in agreement. Hannah's cheeks burned, but she kept her head high, the way she had taught herself to do after years of cruelty. She reminded herself that she was here to celebrate love, not to earn approval. She took a seat near the back, hands folded neatly in her lap, breathing slowly to calm the familiar knot in her chest. She had learned long ago how to endure moments like this. You let them pass through you, she told herself. You don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you break. Around her, the wedding continued like a play, laughter and chatter rising and falling. Friends of the bride posed for photos, relatives embraced, and glasses clinked in cheerful toasts. No one noticed Hannah sitting alone, except to steal another glance and whisper another joke. She wondered, not for the first time, how people could celebrate love while being so careless with cruelty. Across the room, Daniel Carter stood with his young daughter, Lily, holding her small hand as she gazed around in awe at the decorations. Daniel was a single father, his life shaped by responsibility and quiet strength. He had not planned to attend the wedding for long, intending to make a brief appearance out of respect for the groom, an old colleague. Weddings were difficult for him, reminders of what he had lost and what he had chosen to build alone instead. Lily tugged at his sleeve, pointing toward the dessert table, her eyes wide with excitement. He smiled down at her, promising they would get cake later after the ceremony. As Daniel scanned the room, his gaze fell on Hannah. He noticed her not because of her size, but because of the way she sat, composed and dignified despite the tension around her. He followed the direction of other guests, eyes, and caught fragments of their laughter. The meaning behind it was unmistakable. Something tightened in his chest, a familiar anger rising. He had seen this before in schoolyards and offices, in subtle remarks and open ridicule. Lily had not yet experienced it, but he knew she would someday, and the thought unsettled him deeply. He believed that silence in moments like these was a form of agreement, and he had spent years teaching himself to speak when it was easier not to. The ceremony began, drawing everyone's attention forward. Hannah focused on the vows, letting the words of commitment and devotion wash over her. She found comfort in them, even as a part of her ached. Love, she thought, was supposed to make people better, kinder. Yet here she was, surrounded by love, feeling smaller than ever. When the ceremony ended and applause filled the hall, she joined in, clapping softly, grateful for the distraction. But the reception brought fresh challenges. As guests moved toward their tables, the whispers returned louder now, emboldened by wine and familiarity. At the buffet, Hannah waited patiently, ignoring the exaggerated size behind her. Someone joked loudly about needing extra servings because of certain appetites, and laughter followed. Her hands trembled slightly as she filled her plate, choosing modest portions, as if to prove something to people who would never be satisfied. She carried her plate carefully back to her seat, eyes fixed on the floor. She did not see Daniel watching her, his expression hardening with resolve. Lily tugged at Daniel's hand again, this time pointing at Hannah. "Daddy," she whispered, "why are those people being mean to that lady?" Daniel knelt down, meeting his daughter's gaze. Children saw the truth without filters, and Lily's concern was genuine. He chose his words carefully. "Sometimes people forget how to be kind," he said softly. "But we don't have to forget." Lily nodded, satisfied for the moment, and Daniel stood up, his decision made. He took Lily's hand and began walking toward Hannah's table, ignoring the curious looks that followed him. Hannah was halfway through her meal when she noticed the shadow fall across her table. She looked up, startled, expecting another awkward comment or forced politeness. Instead, she saw a man with kind eyes and a little girl clutching his hand. The girl smiled shyly at her. "Is this seat taken?" the man asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. His voice was calm, respectful, without a trace of mockery. Hannah hesitated, then shook her head. "No," she replied quietly. "Please." He pulled out the chair and sat, helping Lily into the seat beside him. "I'm Daniel," he said, extending a hand. Hannah shook it, surprised by the warmth of his grip. "Hannah," she replied. Lily waved enthusiastically. "I'm Lily," she announced, and Hannah couldn't help but smile back. Something about the child's openness eased the tightness in her chest. For the first time that evening, she felt seen as a person, not a spectacle. They began to talk, at first about simple things. The wedding, the decorations, the cake Lily was eagerly anticipating. Daniel listened attentively, laughing at Hannah's dry humor, asking thoughtful questions. He did not rush the conversation or glance around nervously. He was fully present, and that presence was powerful. Around them, the room seemed to shift. Guests who had been whispering now watched openly, confused by the sight of someone choosing Hannah's company. A few snickers faded into silence as Daniel spoke a little louder, his tone warm and confident, impossible to dismiss. At one point, a man from a nearby table leaned over and made a crude joke, loud enough for others to hear. Daniel turned slowly, his expression steady but firm. "This is a celebration," he said evenly. "Let's try acting like it." The room went quiet. The man flushed and muttered an apology, retreating quickly. Hannah's heart pounded, a mix of shock and gratitude washing over her. No one had ever defended her like that in public. She felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them away, unwilling to cry in front of strangers. As the evening continued, more people approached their table, drawn by curiosity or genuine interest. Some offered polite conversation, others awkward apologies. Hannah accepted them with grace, though she knew the change in attitude was not entirely sincere. Still, something had shifted. The laughter at her expense had stopped. In its place was an uncomfortable awareness, as if the guests had been forced to confront their own behavior. Daniel stayed by her side, not as a hero seeking praise, but as a human being who refused to tolerate cruelty. Later, as the music swelled and couples took to the dance floor, Lily tugged at Hannah's sleeve. "Will you dance with us?" she asked hopefully. Hannah laughed softly, shaking her head. "I'm not much of a dancer," she admitted. Daniel smiled. "Neither am I," he said. "That makes 3 of us." They stood together, moving awkwardly but happily, Lily giggling between them. Hannah felt lighter than she had in years, her laughter genuine, her joy unguarded. For a moment, the judgment of others faded into irrelevance. When the night drew to a close, Hannah found herself standing outside the hall, the cool air refreshing after the warmth inside. Daniel and Lily joined her, waiting for their ride. "Thank you," Hannah said quietly, finally finding the words. "You didn't have to do any of that." Daniel shrugged gently. "Kindness shouldn't be optional," he replied, "and Lily deserves to see what it looks like." Lily nodded solemnly, as if this were a lesson she would carry forever. As they said their goodbyes, Hannah watched them leave, her heart full. She returned home that night, changed, not because the world had suddenly become kind, but because someone had chosen to stand beside her when it mattered. The laughter she had endured for so long no longer echoed as loudly in her mind. In its place was the memory of a single dad stepping forward, a child's smile and the quiet power of dignity. Hannah knew she would carry that moment with her, a reminder that even in rooms full of judgment, compassion could still rise, strong enough to be seen, strong enough to matter.